Hello, welcome to Custom Storyteller. This is a channel where topics are suggested by viewers and a custom story is written around that topic. If you would like to request a topic for a story, you can email at storyteller2023@outlook.com. Also, don't forget to hit the subscribe button if you haven't already, and you can hit the bell for notifications for future videos. For this week, we have received a request about a refrigerator. So, here's our story, the refrigerator. The money was burning a hole in his pocket. For the entirety of the previous week, all he could think about was the fact that he had his own money and he would soon be able to trade it for some treasure over the weekend. You see, for quite some time, Carson and his father had the Saturday tradition of waking up early and going from yard sale to yard sale. It was fun. You never knew what you might find. Honestly, most of the items seemed of little value, or in some cases, even trash. One man's trash is another man's treasure, his dad had told him on one of the first times they had been out yard sailing. What does that even mean? Young Carson had asked. His father merely smiled back and replied, "You'll see." And see he did. With every stop they made and every box they browsed, the possibilities were endless. He never knew what could be waiting in the next one. Over the weeks and even the next couple years, discoveries had been made and some transactions had taken place that had put these items into the ever-growing collection he had going on in his bedroom. Of course, all of these things were paid for by his father. But now that he was getting a little older, and the idea of having money of his own and being able to buy something himself made him feel kind of adultish. Not to mention, there were a couple of instances when his dad had turned down his requests to buy certain things because he saw no use for them whatsoever. It was in those times his dad had told him, maybe if you had your own money, and that is really what you wanted to spend it on, then you could. Well, now he did. He had his own money. He had spent the last Saturday afternoon doing yard work for the elderly couple who lived across the street. And as they were approaching the first stop of the morning, the hole being burned in his pocket was growing bigger and bigger. "This is it, Dad. This is what I want to buy with my money." "Are you sure?" his father asked. "I mean, you worked hard for that money. You want to use it for something that matters." "It does matter," he shot back. "This is exactly what I need. I've always wanted one of my own." His father stared back and forth between his son and the object of his son's desire. He wanted to tell him no, but at the same time he had told him he could buy what he wanted with his own money. "Well," his dad said, "does it even work?" It did not look like it was in good shape at all. "It works all right," came a voice from behind him. He turned to see an old man wearing a Cincinnati Reds ball cap. "It works better than you can even imagine." "Okay," said Carson's father, not sure why he was just taking this man's word at face value. "It's your money. You can buy it if you want." "Yes," Carson exclaimed, "this is what I want." And that is how he came into possession of the mini refrigerator. Now, the last Saturday afternoon had been filled with hard work. That was how he had earned the money to pay for the refrigerator. This Saturday afternoon was work as well, but he was not earning any money, and he was enjoying it all the more. Even though his dad had agreed to allow him to purchase the refrigerator, he had insisted that he clean it. Now, cleaning was not one of his favorite things to do, but he did not object. This was exciting. His very own refrigerator. He had big plans for it. He knew just the spot he wanted to keep it in his room. He was thinking of the snacks he would keep inside of it as he sprayed and scrubbed the fridge clean. Yes, all of the snacks he could keep inside that were his, and he wouldn't have to share with his brother, Lucas. Now, as he was thinking this, Lucas appeared from around the corner. "What in the world is that?" he asked in his usual snarky way. "It's mine," Carson retaliated, "and you better not touch it." Lucas breathed out. "Another stupid yard sale, waste of money, I see." Now, Lucas never went on the yard sale expeditions. The couple of times they had tried to wake him, it was as if they had started World War III. He was not a morning person. He walked away. Carson finished cleaning and placed the refrigerator in his room. The only real problem that he encountered was that he really didn't own any food that was exclusively his. Of course, there was the fridge downstairs that he was free to eat, but that was the family's food. He longed to put food into his refrigerator. It was as if the energy that had been behind the money, burning the hole in his pocket, had now been transferred to this urge to fill his personal refrigerator with food. He went downstairs to see what he could find. He was in luck. There was a bag of cheese sticks and a couple of apples that he imagined would look much nicer in his refrigerator. So he snatched a couple of the cheese sticks and the apples. Now, upon turning around, he found himself face to face with his mother. "Hungry?" she asked. "A little," he responded. "Well, it would appear to be more than just a little," she said as she stared at his hands full of the cheese and apples. "But you need to save one of those apples for your brother. I did buy them because he specifically asked for them." Carson was slightly annoyed, but he put an apple back in the fridge. As he hurried his way back to his room, he passed Lucas, who had heard the whole thing. He didn't stop to chat, but he did notice that Lucas was sticking out his tongue at him. When he got to his room, he put the food in his new fridge. Well, he put some of it in. One of the cheese sticks met its doom early. He was hungry, so he ate it. He lay down on his bed and he dozed off. When he awoke, he was not hungry, but he wanted to eat anyway. He wanted to eat something that had been cooled in his own refrigerator. So he opened it up, reached in, and grabbed the other cheese stick. Hungry or not, the cheese was delicious. It always is. When he swallowed it is when it happened. Now, explaining exactly what happened is difficult to do, because what happened to Carson when he swallowed that food is something that had never happened to him before. And as far as I know, has never happened to anyone before or since. While he was eating, he was sitting on his bed, but now he was suddenly on the ground. He lay there confused, trying to figure out exactly how he had fallen off his bed. But when he looked back toward it, he discovered that the bed was not there. In fact, nothing from his room was there. The room itself was not there. He looked up and saw clouds and a purplish sky. He was not in his room. Standing up and looking at his new surroundings, he felt both intrigued and terrified. What was this place? There were trees and grass, and he even saw what appeared to be a pond in the distance. And next to the pond, was that a cabin? "I'm dreaming," he said out loud. "This is one of those dreams where you dream that you woke up, but you never really did." But as much as everything here looked so dreamlike, it did not feel like a dream. It didn't feel like a dream at all. He started walking in the opposite direction of the cabin. He didn't know why, but that just seemed like the right thing to do. Being in a strange place was scary enough. Who knows if the people living there would be friend or foe? He walked to what was the entrance to the woods, and right before he got there, he bent down and picked a flower. The flower was orange with black stripes. He had never seen a flower like that before. Now, after taking his attention off the flower, he saw something peculiar by a tree. It appeared to be a door. Now, there was no house or building attached to it, just a door. He walked to it and found there was writing on it, and it was just one word. Home is what it said. Now, for whatever reason, he reached out and turned the handle. The door opened and he stepped through. Immediately, he was in his room again. Turning around to see the door that he had just walked through, he saw that it was not there. As more time passed, Carson slowly began to come to terms with the fact that whatever in the world had just happened had not been a dream. He waited patiently to wake up, and he never did because he was already awake. And anytime that he thought maybe he had imagined it, he would look and see that he still had the flower, the orange flower with the black stripes. The rest of the day went by uneventfully unless you count the chaos that was taking place in his mind. The family had dinner, watched some television, and it was finally time for bed. He tried to sleep, but it just wasn't happening. All he could think about was that place he had been. After lying in bed for a couple of hours and being no closer to sleep, he decided to have a snack. He went to his fridge. The only food he had to choose from was the apple. He took a bite and instantly, he was in the place again. He couldn't believe it, but he did. Here he was, and he was starting to see the truth. This was his second time here, and both times he had entered this place after taking a bite of food. But it only happened when he took a bite of food that had been cooled in his new refrigerator. Why? And how? How is this possible? He didn't know. But what he did know is that he needed to check for that door. Along the tree line, he saw it. How comforting it was to know that there was a door labeled home that he could use to return at any time. With this knowledge, he felt less afraid and more curious than even the last time. He began to explore. Passing the patch of orange flowers with black stripes, he made his way along the edge of the woods. One thing he remembered from the last time was that the sky was a purplish color. Checking this again, he saw that was indeed the case. He went down the hill a bit, remembering there was a cabin, still nervous about whether someone lived there and if they might not be pleased with his presence. He went along cautiously with his head up to be alert of any danger. He came upon a creek that was coming out of the woods, and it crept past the cabin. When he looked down into the water, he was startled and nearly lost his composure. What he saw there made him believe he was not alone. Someone else was there, looking back at him. But he looked again. It was just his own reflection in the water. Now that is not what frightened him, though. He had expected to see his reflection. As he examined his face in the water, he saw that it was him, but it was a much older version of him. It was like he was seeing himself in the future. So strange. But then again, this entire place was strange. Whatever else might he find? He had to prepare himself for anything. After a few minutes, he mustered up the courage to walk to the cabin. He had to know. Could there be someone there with answers? He couldn't believe he was doing this. Going closer to the home was one thing. Knocking on the door was another. Instead of hiding from whomever lived there, he was now making himself known. But there was no answer. There was no sign of anyone anywhere. Curiosity got the best of him, and he ventured a look into the window. It was empty. In no way was this place run down, though. It was very nice. But it was obvious to him that nobody lived there. And after investigation, he didn't believe anyone was anywhere nearby. Not only was the cabin deserted, but from what he could tell, the entire world or dimension or whatever it was seemed to be lacking any human beings whatsoever. At first, he was disappointed in this. There was no one to ask questions about where he was. But then, the realization of what he had discovered dawned upon him. He had his own secret world, a world that he could go to anytime that he wanted just by eating food from his refrigerator. And there was a cabin there, his empty cabin that needed things. Could things be transported to this place? I mean, he had brought the flour back with him. Maybe bringing things there was possible. He had to try. He walked back towards the woods to the door that said, home. He opened it and walked through. He was back. What should I bring? He said to himself. Many things, but let's try something easy first. On his bedroom door, there was a sign that said Carson, indicating that this was his room, his place. The cabin is my place now, he said, and he took the sign from his door. Now for something to eat. Upon opening the refrigerator door, he was reminded that it was now empty. He had eaten all of his snacks, so he ran downstairs to find something to put into it. The first thing he saw was the apple, the last apple. And wouldn't you know, Lucas had actually written his name on it with a marker. That brat, he thought. Any thoughts of taking anything else was gone. He snatched that apple. Waiting several minutes while the apple was now in the refrigerator was pure torture. He finally took it out, hoping that it had been in there long enough. And with the name sign in hand, he took a bite. It worked. He ran down to the cabin. He ran to his cabin. Funny thing, there was actually already a nail sticking out of the front door in just the perfect place. He hung it and took some time to admire how it looked. That's right, he said out loud. This is Carson's place. This is my place. After a bit, he went back up the hill and found the door. Reaching out, he grabbed the handle and turned. But this time it did not cooperate. He tried again and again and again. The door was locked. He kicked it. He slammed himself against it, but nothing worked. The door just would not open. He was stuck. Now back in his room, in the real world, something happened that was not cool. Lucas just knew that Carson was the one who took his apple. He had gone to check his refrigerator to find evidence. When he found none, he became even more infuriated, and he kicked the refrigerator, and in so doing, the refrigerator had become unplugged. I hope you enjoyed our story. If you did, if you could click the like button, that would be appreciated, or say something in the comments. Don't forget also, if you haven't subscribed and you would be interested in hearing more, to go ahead and to do that. You could also email at storyteller2023@outlook.com. Just send a random topic, and if yours is selected, we will do our best to create a story around it. And thank you again for listening. Goodbye.